they would fulfill the needs of leadership best. So the da'wah, as we said, is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is not to a madhab, a group, an individual, because that is splitting up the ummah. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah Rum, verses 31 and 32, لا تكونوا من المشركين من الذين فرقوا دينهم وكانوا شيعا كل حزب بما لديهم فرحون. Do not be of the pagans, of those who split up their religion and became sects, each sect rejoicing in what it has. Do not be of the pagans, of those who split up their religion and became sects, each sect rejoicing in what it has. That is the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also, the importance of the companions can be found in Surah An-Nisa, verse 115, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَمَنْ يُشَاقِقِ الرَّسُولِ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا تَبَيَّنَ لَهُ الْهُدَى وَيَتَّبِعْ غَيْرَ سَبِيلِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ نُوَلِّهِ مَا تَوَلَّى وَنُصْلِهِ جَهَنَّمْ وَسَاءَتْ مَصِيرًا. Whoever opposes the messenger after guidance has been made clear to him and follows a way other than that of the believers, I will leave him to his choice, place him in hell, and worst indeed is that destination. This verse is very significant in that Allah says here, whoever opposes the messenger after guidance has been made clear to him. He didn't stop there and say that that person is headed to hell. He added, and follows a way other than that of the believers. And who were the believers when that verse was revealed? The Sahaba, the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. He adds that as a condition, that whoever follows a way other than that of the companions, he will be left on his own and his ending will be in hell. That is a great significance placed on the understanding and the way of the Sahaba. And in another narration from the Prophet ﷺ, narrated by Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, he said, Allah's messenger drew a line in the dirt and said, this is the path of Allah. Then he drew other lines branching off to the right and to the left and said, these are paths at the end of which is a devil calling people to it. Then he said, وَأَنَّ هَذَا صِرَاطِي مُسْتَقِيمًا فَاتَّبِعُوهُ وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا السُّبُلَ فَتَفَرَّقَ بِكُمْ عَنْ سَبِيلِهِ. This is my straight path, so follow it, and do not follow the other paths, for they will separate you from his path. The path of Islam, that understanding of the Sahaba, is one path. As I said in the lecture last night, that there is one God, and there is one human race, and Allah revealed one religion, and the Prophet ﷺ showed us that there is only one way to follow it. There's one, right? One God, one human race, one religion, and one way to follow that religion. Now that one way is not so narrow that it's like a thread. You know, if you step slightly to the right, you're off. Now some people have tried to do that. Made it so tight and narrow that most people can't even get on it. No. It is one way, but that one way has some diversity. Meaning, we look at the Sahaba. Did they agree on everything? No. They had differences of opinion. But if you asked Abu Huraira, what was your madhab? What do you think he was going to say? I'm a Hanafi? Or a Maliki? No, he's going to say, I follow the madhab of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And if you asked Abu Hanifa, what was your madhab? Is he going to say, I'm a Hanafi? No. He would say, I follow the madhab of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And if you asked Imam Bukhari, What was his madhab? Some people say he was a Shafi'i. No. Imam Bukhari, yes, he studied fiqh of Shafi'i, fiqh, etc. But he wasn't a Shafi'i. He followed Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That was his madhab. And that is the tradition of the Sahaba. The Tabi'een, Tabi'een, they followed the madhab of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But to follow that madhab required them to seek knowledge from those who were more knowledgeable than they were. So there were amongst the Sahaba some who were leading scholars. Those who were called the four Abdullahs, Al-Abadila, Al-Arba'. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, Abdullah ibn Abbas, Abdullah ibn Umar, and Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As. These were known as the four Abdullahs. They were the leading fuqaha amongst the Sahaba. So people studied under them and they gravitated around them. But nobody came to be known as an Abbasi or Ibn Umari. These names didn't come up. Similarly, those who studied under them, under the generation that studied under them, they didn't make these distinctions. They studied under the leading scholars of their time in order to better be able to understand the madhab of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and to follow it. And that was the position of the Imams, the great Imams. The four we know, and the many others most of us don't know. They all sought to follow the madhab of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that madhab is one madhab. But it has within it diversity. Diversity whether it comes from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself, in his actions. For example, when he prayed, when he made salah and he said, Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli. Pray as you saw me pray. Sometimes when he prayed, he said Allahu Akbar and he raised his hands to the level of his ears. Now some people put their fingers on the ears or touch their ears, trying to make sure that their hand has reached the ear. Have I reached the ear? No, this is not what he said. He did. He raised his hands to the level of his ears, right? Without going all the way back. Some people start off salah like this. Right? He raised his hands to the level of his ears, or to the level of his shoulders. Now some people say this is the one for women, because women aura, this area, they should cover the aura. But for the man, no aura, so you put your hand up. No. Prophet ﷺ, he did both. He didn't say this one was for men and that one was for women. He didn't say this. People did that. So if you choose to go this way, or you choose to go this way, it's alright. That's diversity, which the Prophet ﷺ left behind. And so on and so forth, through all of the various practices of the religion, whether it's in Hajj, whether it is in fasting, he left certain variations which we are allowed to do. And of course we need to know those variations so we don't try to restrict Islam to just one particular practice of the Prophet ﷺ. We should know that there were variations. Be aware of them. Also there's variations in understandings of the Prophet ﷺ's instructions. Because we have, for example, a very famous hadith narration from the Prophet ﷺ after the battle of Khandaq, the battle of the trench, when the Prophet ﷺ was sent to deal with the Jewish tribe that had betrayed Muslims, had supported the pagans against the Muslims. And he sent the Sahaba out to their fortress. He said to them, do not pray Salatul Asr except at the fortress of Banu Qurayza. Do not pray Asr except at the fortress of Banu Qurayza. So the companions set off. First group. He was coming with a second group. On the way, Asr came in. They carried on. Then they reached the point where they saw Asr is going to go out. Time for Asr is going to finish. And they hadn't reached Bani Qurayza. What to do? Some of them said, we need to stop here and pray. Others said, the Prophet ﷺ said, pray Asr at Bani Qurayza. The first group said, what he meant by that was to hurry up and get to Banu Qurayza. The others said, what he said was, pray in Banu Qurayza. So, those who went according to what they felt he intended, they prayed on the way. The others when the group reached Banu Qurayza, it was in Maghrib time, they prayed their Asr first and then they prayed Maghrib. After the battle, they came and brought this incident back to the Prophet ﷺ, and he didn't say either group was wrong. He approved what both groups did. But what he did was to pray Asr on the way. What he did was to pray Asr on the way. Okay? But he approved of what both did. Why? Because what he said had that implication. Both implications. So, where we have texts from the Quran or from the Sunnah which have more than one implication, some scholars take one implication and other scholars take another implication, all of that is still considered to be on the one path. So we have to have a certain amount of flexibility to allow for differences of opinion. Where they are sound, where they have hadith, where they have fiqh backing it, not difference of opinion where I think. I say, brother, okay, you think. Everybody can think, right? Everybody can have an opinion. We're not talking about those kind of opinions. We're talking about opinions which are based on knowledge, not mere opinions, because otherwise we would end up in chaos. So that one way includes those differences which are allowed by the texts themselves. We have to be prepared to accept such differences. Now, so we said the da'wah is to Islam. And Islam has many aspects to it. We cannot call people in one instance to all aspects. So therefore we have to give some priorities. What is the most important thing that we need to call people to? Prophet Muhammad ﷺ told us where to place priority. In a hadith, in a statement he gave to Mu'adh ibn Jabal, when he sent him to Yemen, he said, إِنَّكَ تَقْدَمُ عَلَى قَوْمٍ أَهْلِ كِتَابٍ فَلْيَكُنْ أَوَّلَ مَا تَدْعُوهُمْ إِلَيْهِ أَنْ يُوَحِّدُوا اللَّهِ. You will be going to a group of Christians and Jews. So the first thing you should invite them to is the assertion of the oneness of Allah. Tawheed. That is the most important part of Islam that we call people to. That is first. It means that is what we give priority to. It doesn't necessarily mean it is the first thing we say. Because somebody might say to you, why do your Muslim women cover themselves up? For you to say, that's not important. What you need to know is that Allah is one. That's not going to work. Because people ask a question, they want an answer. So you need to deal with the issue that they have raised. You clarify to them that this is not something which was invented by Muslims. It's not a cultural thing. It is something which God has prescribed. Allah, He has commanded Muslims to do this. And He has given the reasons, and you go on and explain. But you have linked it back to Allah, right? So that you use your topic, whatever it may be, as a means of carrying them back to the original important message. And that is to the oneness of Allah. That it's about Allah ultimately. It's not about what you see me do or you hear me say. It is ultimately about what Allah has commanded us to do and to say. And we can see this also, for example, in Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam, when he was placed in the prison And the people asked him, the two individuals asked him to interpret their dreams. That he, before interpreting their dreams, he said, whenever food came to you as your provision, I informed you about it before it came. Right? He reminds them, why is it they're asking him to interpret? He said, right, because you've seen I've been able to tell you about these things before. But where did that come from? He said, that is from what my Lord taught me. Don't think that it's from me. You've asked me to interpret your dream. You're thinking I am going to make an interpretation from you. No, it is from what my Lord has taught me. Indeed, and then he went on to explain, I have abandoned the religion of a people who did not believe in Allah and the hereafter, and I have followed the religion of my fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and we would never attribute any partners whatsoever to Allah. This is from the grace of Allah to us and to humankind, but most people are not thankful. Right? So he used that opportunity first to give them da'wah to Allah. While keeping it on topic, you're asking me to interpret for you. Why? Because you see I've been able to do this, but it's not really me. It's from Allah. And then he goes on to give them some logic to reflect on. Oh, my two prison companions, are different lords better than Allah, the one, the irresistible? Some logic here. It's better to have different lords. This one tells you to do this, the other one tells you to do that. They're both telling you. It's confusion. Better to have one only. Right? This is logic, some reason here in the da'wah. You are only worshipping besides him names which you have made up, you and your forefathers, which Allah has not given you any authority for. Judgment belongs to Allah alone. He has commanded that you worship none besides him. That is the upright religion, but most people don't know. Then he goes on to say, oh, my two prison companions, as for one of you, he will pour wine for his Lord to drink, and as for the other, he will be crucified, and birds will eat from his head. This is the case judged concerning which you both inquire. So he answers their question. He introduces them to why they're asking the question. He gives them some da'wah to the oneness of Allah, and he answers their question. So it's all, he just doesn't leave them going away with just the da'wah and they haven't had their questions answered. No, he answered their question. So, this is just a demonstration of, in practice, that this is what Prophet Yusuf himself, alayhi salam, also followed. So the da'wah, the call to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is one which does not leave room for madhab or group. We have people who call people to Islam, but it's calling them to my group, to join my organization. So really your da'wah is to your organization, not really to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you can tell if somebody tells you, so and so accepted Islam, and then the person asks, which group does he belong to? They say, oh, he belongs to so. See, in their mind, Islam is not complete without their group. But the fact is, Islam is complete without it. The group is only a means to help people to understand Islam. So our da'wah should not be to organizations or to individuals. You have some individuals, who become focal points, that people feel that this person has the good understanding. So really, when you come to Islam or you awaken to Islam, you should be joining this, should be studying under this particular individual. So your da'wah is to the individual, not to Islam. No, this is a mistake. The da'wah should be to Islam in its purity. Islam as understood by the Quran and Sunnah. Yes, you may belong to a group. Yes, you may belong to a madhab. Yes, you may follow a particular scholar. All of this is possible. Following a madhab is not a sin. It is not wrong. A madhab represents the efforts of scholars of the past. And you're following in that tradition. You're learning from those scholars, that group of scholars. There is no harm. As long as you don't become fanatical. You don't become a fanatic for that madhab, where you can't hear anything else, and you feel that right is only confined to that madhab, then you have gone astray. Then you're not following Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam anymore. You're following the madhab. Madhab is, again, like the group, a means. It's only a tool. It only helps you to follow the madhab of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But when the means becomes the end, you have gone astray. You have lost your way. So we may have to make sure that our da'wah is to Islam. Islam in its original purity, free from groups, madhabs, organizations, individuals, etc. But just Islam. Calling people to follow Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He is the one we should follow blindly. That's what people should understand. Yes, if the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, do it, ma atakum rasul fakhudhu, do it. Wa ma nahakum anhu fantahu, and whatever he has forbidden you, leave it. He is the one who we blindly follow. Why? Because he, in terms of his commandments in the religion, was infallible. He is the one who was guided by Allah. If he made any mistake, Allah corrected him. So nothing was left unclear. He is the only one who deserves that kind of following. And to follow any other person, whether a peer or a madhab or a jama'ah or an individual, in that way becomes a form of shirk in Tawheed al-Ittiba', in the Tawheed of following one Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So as we said, Allah is one. Humankind is one. He gave them one religion, and the prophets taught one way to follow that religion. That is the Sunnah. When we say we follow the Quran and the Sunnah, we are following that one way. So that is the essence of the call to Islam. We'll stop here. If you have any questions, we'll take some questions now on the call itself. Try to keep the questions related to the call.
Assalamu alaikum. There's a little confusion regarding the mazhabs, because you said as long as you keep yourself within the range and do not deny other mazhabs, you're still on the right path.
Yeah, what I said regarding the madhab is that if we understand that the madhab was a way to follow Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Abu Hanifa was trying to follow the way of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and his students, Abu Yusuf, Muhammad al-Shaybani, Zufar, they all were trying to follow the way of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the scholars who followed them. They differed amongst themselves. So much of what is in the Hanafi madhab today is not the opinion of Abu Hanifa, though we call it the Hanafi madhab. It is the effort of scholars of the past trying to follow the way of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So to follow a scholar who is a Hanafi scholar, and as such you consider yourself to be a Hanafi, you're following Hanafi fiqh, there is no harm as long as you keep it in context. Meaning that if evidence comes to the contrary, you find somebody from another madhab, they bring you clear evidence from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to the contrary of what you are following, then you don't hesitate to follow the clear evidence. And in doing so, you're actually following the way of Abu Hanifa, who said, إِذَا صَحَّ الْحَدِيث فَهُوَ مَذْهَبِي. If you find an authentic hadith, then that is really my madhab. So as long as you approach your learning with that open mind, then it doesn't matter what madhab you follow, what scholar you follow, what group you're in, etc. As long as you keep an open mind, realizing that ultimately you're trying to follow Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam.
Brother, there are some circumstances in which brothers approach us, like in college or whatever, and they ask us something. Now, what do we do in such cases? Are we allowed to explain it to them?
Okay, issue in da'wah, if a female is calling to Allah, is she allowed to explain Islam to a male? Well, in general, we would say that elaborate explanations is better to leave that to a male to do. But if somebody comes to you in your class or whatever on campus and they ask you something about Islam, for you to give a brief explanation and then suggest to them that they contact such and such a person to follow up for further clarification, this is fine, this is sufficient. You know, you give, of course, in these kind of circumstances, and of course it goes vice versa also, one must be as businesslike as possible. In the same way, when you're asking the shopkeeper to give you an item, you speak to them in a particular voice. That's what we call a business voice. Different from when you're speaking to a female as a male, or a male speaking to a female. Other things might come in. You know, your voice now becomes softer. It's just like even the issue of salam alaikum, you know. Some people have gone to extremes and said, well, okay, males shouldn't even give salams to females. No. People in the early generations, they did. They gave salams back and forth. But it was salam alaikum. Wa alaikum salam. It wasn't salam alaikum. Wa alaikum salam. You know, that's something else. Okay, that's what we have to watch out for. If it is business like salam alaikum, wa alaikum salam, perfectly okay. And that is from the deen. And we shouldn't make it that, no, it's not allowed. Men, you shouldn't give salams to women. Women, you shouldn't give salams to men. So, you're passing by a Muslim, etc., you give salams to them. But, as we said, we keep it business-like. Similarly, somebody's asking about Islam, you give them the basic information they need at the spot, and you tell them, you know, you can get further detail, contact my wife, or the sister say you can contact my husband, or my brother, or there's an organization, etc. you can go to, we can give you a number for or whatever, and you can follow up.